Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed. Long, long ago, far before any Europeans had ever set foot upon the shores of what would one day be the state of Connecticut, the world was a very different place. Of course, there were forests and streams and mountains, flush with life, both human and animal. But it was a time when the spirits and supernatural beings walked the earth alongside mortals, some of which were giants, ones that would go on to shape the very landscape. In these days lived a great stone giant, a giant even among other giants, who went by the name of Habamoch. It is said by the Quinnipiac peoples that it was Habamoch who taught the creatures of the earth how to hunt, fish, forage, and care for the land and for each other. He even went as far as to teach the humans and animals how to speak the same language. Satisfied with his work and the harmony brought about by his teachings, Habamoch set off in a great stone canoe to teach his ways to others. Sometime later, Habamoch returned, and he was shocked to see that his teachings had been all but discarded. Or rather, select lessons of his were no longer practiced. Humans and animals still hunted and foraged for food, yes, and cared for the land in their own ways, but they had ceased speaking the same language. Birds chirped and cawed. The deer bleated and grunted. Wolves howled and barked, and some animals made no noise at all, while human beings, on the other hand, uttered a series of differing sounds that they seemed to all understand, but no animal could. The creatures of the world became divided once more. What Habamoch saw broke his heart, for in his eyes, if universal communication was gone, then the harmony of the world would soon follow. Humans and animals would no longer care for the earth, no longer care for each other. To Habamoch, he believed in the time that he was gone, the seeds of chaos and turmoil had been planted. If Habamoch's heart was not stone to begin with, it hardened itself into something even harder and colder. His sadness turned to uncontrollable rage. In his rage, he shook the very land, tearing up the trees like twigs and causing tremors with his feet. He stamped his foot down hard, diverting the course of the great river. He dipped his hands into the sound and brought up vast amounts of fish and oysters, and guzzled them down, more than even a giant could need. He repeated this over and over, dangerously lowering the population of sea life. The once good giant had turned wicked, and it would only be a matter of time before all the creatures would suffer under his wrath. The people were terrified, afraid for their very lives as the giant tore apart their home, decimated their food supply, and killed any who strayed into his path. But what could they do? Even the bravest of warriors feared the giant. After all, no arrow could pierce Habamoch's stone hide, and even the strongest could not contend with Habamoch's mountainous strength. No, the people needed the help of a good spirit. And so the elders gathered and called upon the spirit Kitan to stop the giant's rampage. Kitan could not be seen by the eyes of mortals, or even giants for that matter, but his presence could be felt. He had heard the people's pleas, and and cast a powerful sleeping spell upon the oysters and shellfish that remained in the coastal waters. The next morning, Habamoch arose and made his way to the shore, and once again gorged himself on oysters. As soon as he had finished his first handful, Kitan's spell took hold, and the giant felt his body drain. His eyes grew heavy. His limbs began to slow. The giant mustered his strength, stood and yawned deeply, and he made his way from the sound into the forest. But he had only managed a few steps before he yawned once more, and he lay down, falling fast asleep. Kitan's spell had worked. Habamoch's rampage came to an end. As time would pass, the world would set itself to right, and forests would grow upon Habamoch's stone skin as he slept. To this very day, Habamoch remains sound asleep. His massive body, forming the mountain range seen today in Hamden, Connecticut, and what is aptly named Sleeping Giant State Park. A place where nature can prosper, and where people can experience nature's wonders. But legend has it that one day Kitan's sleeping spell will wear off. Habamoch will awaken from his deep slumber. The hills formed from his head, body, and legs will be gone. And when Habamoch wakes up, the giant's rage may continue once again.